Okay, I'm going to call to order the Budget Committee meeting of Wednesday, March 15th. And first up, we need to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Yes.
Okay. Next, we have public comment. Is there anyone that would like to make public comment?
I was wondering, Mayor Knopf,
Come on up.
Mayor Knopf. First time I gotta say that.
Yes. Was it fun?
So do I, if I want to speak about our situation, do I talk in the public comment or the good of the order?
You're going to talk during the public comment, but remember that this meeting is not a specific request. This is just our preliminary meeting to get information. So whatever you're going to do, be very general.
Oh, okay.
You want to be general?
Oh, yeah, is this,
This is the time.
so I was asked to come by our president, and
So first off, could you give your name and mailing address?
I'm Mark Ward, mailing address PO Box 845 Seaside 11.
Okay, go ahead.
So our executive would inform me that our line item had been excluded by an executive decision.
We've made no decisions on next year's budget.
Okay, then, this is what I was told. And I want to just
said it.
and
It was nice.
did the best job we've done last year, but there was some one issue of a complaint that there was, we did not meet their criteria. There was too much wood in our collection of microplastic. And you've been on the beach, you know what it's like in there, in the trenches.
Okay.
And so I would like state that we made an extensive effort last year, way more than ever before. The whole organic debris. I've got photographs because when I thought, oh boy, there's somebody's got an issue. Well, let's make sure we cover that issue. I was on the beach 27 days last year myself, making sure. I usually don't work on that crew that much. Might be down there. I'm on and off, but I worked 27 days, making sure we did the best job ever. And we removed as much organic debris as we could. But having been there, you probably understand it. It's impossible to remove all organic debris. Some is definitely, and it's going to sit on top of the bags because the plastics can fall to the bottom of the bag. So you look in the bag and there's going to be some more debris. And I just was asked to come in and explain that we did a really good job last year.
Okay, great.
The proof in the beach, what was in the beach is, if you walk to the beach, you left it pristine. And I've been asked by other committee members to remove everything, get all that dead grass and stuff while we're taking it. It's kind of an added value that we leave pristine. I don't want to leave that grass and wood chips and all that. I want it pristine. And I've been asked by other committee members to do that. Just leave it as pristine as possible. We went one step further because what I don't like, I like pristine. That's what my goal is. And there were a lot of charcoal spread out, a lot, where fire pits had been kicked all over the beach and there's charcoal. I don't like that. I'm trying to create a pristine beach.
Let's wrap it up.
So we even went after that charcoal. We did our best job ever.
Okay, thanks, Bart.
Thank you.
Nope.
Okay. So we have our discussion on the preliminary budget meeting. And Bruce, you want to start?
Sure. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't know if this is a pushing the envelope meeting where we're not supposed to meet with you until we have a budget to hand to you. And that would be more in May, a little bit, in that time frame. And what, in my opinion, that left no time for the budget committee to have any kind of meaningful input. And so what we're doing is having, I guess I call this the semi-legal pre-budget meeting where we can go ahead and talk about what we see happening. You'll be getting the second quarter report from our finance director. I'll be talking about capital projects. If there's things that you would like, us to investigate, or if you have questions about anything that we've done in the past, now would be a good time to do it, so that we have, you have the time and we have the time to be able to do some investigation for you. So that's the purpose of this meeting. It's not an official part of the budget calendar in that the state doesn't recognize it. And told us we can't do it yet. So anyway, with that, I'll turn it over to Lori, and she can start. She's our very able finance director, and start with what our current financial position is.
Hey, so you have before you the report, period ending December 2022. It's the second quarter of our fiscal year. And I thought I'd just talk a little bit about the format of the report. On page 1, you can see the cash position of the city. And I do a little bit of a narrative on funds and point out certain things that I think are important to know about the details of each fund. And then on the second page, we go over just the general fund revenue. And the general fund is the fund of the city where it has the most discretion. So we bring in property taxes, room taxes, various other revenue streams, and those can be spent any way the city wishes. Some of the other funds, like the enterprise funds, those are our utility funds. Those have specific purposes for clean water and wastewater. So then the other funds are more like special revenue funds, like our transient room tax funds. Those have and specific ways the money can be spent on. So the general fund is where you can have a lot of leeway. On page 3, then I show the expenditures in the general fund. Page 4, then I have the individual funds that I just spoke about. Tax funds, we have a building official fund where that money is completely restricted to the use of running the department or building permits, and the like. Then we have our affordable housing fund, which gets construction excise tax. Are built into the building permit process, but those do go into this fund solely. And then, of course, we have our new one still on page 4, the prepared food tax. That has restrictions on it as well. So that all the collections go into this fund, and then any disbursements are made out of that fund. Page 5, I continue on with the individual funds. Here we see RV park, and then most of the utilities are here, and the road fund is represented. And then on page 6, you can see details of debt service, the tourism facility renovation, which is a new fund. This is like our capital project fund for the Cannon Beach Elementary project. We had bond proceeds come into that fund in March of 2022. And so we're currently spending that money on the project. And then you have the administrative services fund, and that's the fund where we have the executive, which is city manager and city recorder, have the finance department represented there. We have public works, where we have 3 employees there. And what this does is we charge out the expenses of running those. So I have my own fund for finance, and I have a central services fund. And then our public works director has a fund, and those costs get sprinkled out among the utilities, general fund, RV park, so that we can recoup the cost of overhead essentially. The bottom of page 6, this is where I look and see how well I did with the estimating our beginning fund balances. So you can see the actual for the general fund came in at 4.5. We don't know that number until a month or so after June. So it's my job to try to estimate that so we can get that in the budget as a beginning fund balance. You can see I budgeted 3.2 million. We actually came in with 4.5 million. So that's, 1.3 million more. So maybe a little too conservative, but it's sometimes difficult to kind of nail down that number. The highlighted ones are where I came under. And I know I've talked about this in previous reports. Nothing too concerning to me. And if we did have, because that's part of our resources, the beginning fund balance. So when we're budgeting, we budget for resources and then the expenditures. So if we don't get resources coming in, we won't have the funds to pay our expenses. However, we usually have a very good contingency in these funds, like the RV park, which can make up for that loss sources if that occurs. Now, for the RV park, as an example, we get revenues coming in. And so a lot of times that's going to exceed what my estimate is. So there's little cushions built into this process. And of course, I monitor it closely. So if we need to use contingency, then I bring that to council. Page 7, I'm always showing the results of our room tax here. This shows back to year 2011. You can see the history where room tax has been increasing every year, obviously, with the exception of the pandemic year, where we had quite a bit of a drop from the prior year. If you look at line 5 there, our room tax came in at 3.8 million. The prior year was 4.5 million. So you can see where the town was closed, it had an impact. However, we recovered nicely in 2021. Line 4, you can see we came in at 5.5 million. And then 2022 was really great too at 5.9 million. When I was budgeting for the current year, I thought, well, I don't know if we can do 5.9 million again. So the current year budget is 5.5 million, and I believe we will hit that target and may exceed that a little bit. And at the top of this report, page 7, you can see the breakdown by quarter and the amount contributing from hotel, motel, and short-term vacation rentals. Then I always do a report on page 8 about tourism and arts fund. The fund where 1% of our 8% tax goes into. This is the fund where by an application process, people who hold events can come in and get contributions that we pay out from this fund. And then lastly, page 9 is by fund, transient room tax collections. And so you can see that in the general fund, our first quarter came in at 2.1 million. Our budget was 1.9 million. So we're doing well there. And the same goes for quarter 2 in the general fund. And it follows in sync with the TAF and the TRT fund as well. Now, we do have another stream of revenue from room tax, and it comes from the county. They have a 1% tax and only use 30% of your room tax revenue as discretionary revenue. So just do whatever you want with it. The other 70% is dedicated to tourism purposes. And the county decided they didn't want to be in the tourism business. So they elected to give each city the 70% of the 1% tax that was collected in their city back to us. So when I talk about our 8% tax, it's just the general fund, TAF fund, and TRT fund. I keep the other one separate because it's not something that the city has, that's not our tax that we levied. So really, it's more like a donation from the county, but we still have to make sure it is used for tourism purposes. So that is that page. Sometimes I put supplemental information with my quarterly report. Last quarter, I think I went over property taxes and that kind of thing, but you can see the reports online if you're interested in some of that information. So for general fund revenues, I often look at the top 10 revenue streams in the general fund. And of course, room tax is the top revenue stream of that fund. This year to date, we've got 0.1 million room tax in the general fund. Property tax is our second revenue stream at 697,000 year to date. Interest income has now risen to place 3 just because of the current climate. Normally, it's a little bit farther down. But if you look at our top 10, it's interest income, court fines, planning fees, franchise fees, business licenses, state revenues, parking lot maintenance, and then land leases. And that, we add up those year-to-date numbers, it comes out to 3.3 million. And if you look at our total revenues here on page 2, line 39, their current fiscal year to date, total revenues are 3.8 million, and our top 10 comprise 3.3 million. So it's 86% of all of our revenues. Now, if you add in, we have some nice grants that have come in from the American Rescue Plan. You can see one of those grants, it's 196,350, and that is on line 22 year to date. And then the other one is from our it was a legislative grant given to the Emergency Management Program. Brick is working on cash site improvements there. That's at the bottom on line 48. That's 200,000. So those two large sums of money are in that 3.8 million. And we also had a nice grant from Friends of Haystack Rock in the amount of $32,601. You can see that on line 29. So then if you add those nice grants up, that's $527,000. So you're looking at about 98,000 left over is just little various lines in here that, don't really add up to a lot, but are still taking up space on my report. So let me see if I have anything else. I wanted to point out on page 3, if you look, I always look to see that the expenditures are hopefully under a 50%, because that's where we're at right now. We're halfway through our year. So if expenditures are over 50%, I usually take a look at that to kind of see what's happening with that fund. And if you look here on line 7, community development, we're at 58.28%. So in January, Jeff came before the council and asked for a budget adjustment because he had some expenses that he was going to incur that either weren't budgeted for or coming in at a much higher cost. Part of that was the code audit and legal fees for running his department. So in my next quarter report, you'll see that the budget is $658,000 budget will increase. And then that will keep him down into, if we had made that budget in adjustment in December, then he would be at 49% right now. So within the normal ranges. So that will help in the next quarter report. All the other funds are right in line with the target. Overall, our expenditures are 31% of the budget, see on line 22. Fund balance increased in the general fund, $1,032,852. So that's good. On page 1, our cash position is up $7,448,000. A lot of that is attributed to the bond proceeds that we received that we're now spending. And so overall, this is a very good report. And don't see anything alarming here, except for community development, which you've already taken care of that. So normally I look at page 4 and 5 and 6, and I typically look at fund balances are increasing or not. If they're not, then I kind of take a look at what's happening there. We had a loan from the TAF fund purchased the school, and that loan has now been paid off this fiscal year, so we don't owe that anymore. You can see that on line 14 on page 4, where we paid the debt service, that final payment of $34,000. All the funds on this page have fund balances that are increasing, with the exception of the county TRT fund. The only expenditure there was $34,000, so that's why that went down. Page 5, all of our ending funds, with the exception of the roads fund. Roads fund typically gets subsidy, if you will, from the general fund. Because that fund collects fuel tax and property taxes, and those two revenue streams are not enough to meet the expenditure needs. So that's typical, you'll see happening. And I think that's all I have. Questions?
Maybe I missed it, but why is the PFT not in, or for Q2 not in there?
But now,
The comparative food tax mentioned for the quarter in the month, but not technically.
I have the tax on page 4 at the bottom right. You can see we have year-to-date revenues coming in of $687,205.
And then on page 1, under comparative food tax, that is Q1. So,
That is the first quarter collection because it's not represented here because we don't collect it until January. So these are collections on cash basis. So for our first quarter, it's reflected here, not the second quarter because we didn't get those revenues until January. And this report goes through December.
okay. Right,
And it's budgeted that way as well.
It's budgeted on an annual basis. So by the time we get to June 30, it'll accrue that final quarter back into.
To Greg's question or point. We don't have a model to determine how much is going to be collected in the prepared food tax. We don't have experience. And so we went to something that we know a little bit about, and that is the TLT. And so we budgeted it based on, we did projections based on the ratio of like the various quarters in the TLT. And so what we found is that the first quarter, this will give you an idea of how the collections are going. The first quarter was about $12,000 less than whatever percent we anticipated for the TLT. The second quarter came in was about $100,000 less. So we don't have that number in here yet, but the trend is below the TLT, but we have no reason to believe the TLT is going to be, the absolute definitive. Matter of fact, some people in the food industry have said we don't have the same kind of fluctuation in TLT as we do in the food we don't have it in the food industry as the TLT does. But we kind of see that there is a similar trend and that we were very close in the beginning. And then this is one of our lowest quarters. It dropped, it's at $100,000 below. So we're tracking that all the way through, but that's what happened, even though it's not in the report yet. It'll be in the next one.
Bruce, I know you have zero experience actually doing this, so modeling is of limited value, but have you thought more about, the sources of the variance? Is this compliance? Is it, we just got the top line number wrong? So therefore the tax budget is wrong. Where are we at on kind of the buckets of compliance? Which I guess would kind of be the only real variable other than traffic.
Right. And it's, again, this is our first quarter that was down. And what they anticipated was 1.76 million in a year. And we don't know how we're going to, if we reach it or whatever. But as far as going in and looking at compliance, we just started everybody working on this. And so we've not gone to try to do it from an audit standpoint, although we do have the right to do audits on this. And I imagine we'll be taking a closer look at it. But this is, again, we don't even know if the model is legitimate to be able to say that we're $100,000 below. It's $100,000 below AMA. So we will follow up on all those things.
But you did mention, I think earlier, in earlier conversations that everybody had paid, right? Pretty much everybody.
Well, everybody that was supposed to send us PFT funds did. We just don't know if they sent us the right amount. We have not done that yet.
At least you have participation, if not compliance. We know participation.
Participation is good.
Other questions, comments?
We can talk about
Staff.
projects.
Does staff want to have any other additional information for us?
That was second quarter. I have information regarding projects and other things
Okay,
we can talk about and then try to answer any questions. In the past several years, the city council has put a higher focus on resiliency from just weather events, really cold, whatever, and also Cascadia type events and other seismic events. So we have two projects that are related to that. First one is water supply resiliency. And what that is an effort to redo our water supply system because we don't know how many people we're going to have. We don't know how many people we're going to bring enough bottles of water to last several weeks. And so we need to get water available at some point in the city. In this case, it'll be in the vicinity of the RV park within 3 days, because that's how long somebody can last without it. So we're redoing the system and it does need to be redone. We have the lines that come down from the springs are asbestos concrete, which is very rigid. And so if there's ground shaking, it's like crack or break. And so that we cannot rely on that. And so we have a project which starts with isolation valves for the 3 tanks that we have, so that if a seismic event occurs or if there's an accident someplace and somebody breaks the line, all the water doesn't drain out of that tank. If the tank senses or these sensors indicate that there is a lot of water, more water than should be leaving, they'll shut down that tank. That way we have that water in reserve. So that was the first thing, to try to make sure that we could have water available. Second is the line replacement. I mentioned that it was asbestos concrete coming down. And that is $3.2 million. And we're converting the pipe to HDPE, which is a flexible pipe. So if the ground moves, the pipe moves with it. Gives us a greater chance of being able to supply the water. And going back to the valves. The valves was $586,000. The design and engineering, we're approaching completion on that, and we'll put it out to bid soon. There was the Public Works staff did an amazing job with going through the loan process. We have funding of 1% over 30 years for that project and 50% principal forgiveness. So it means we're paying maybe $300,000 for a $600,000 loan. The line replacement, as I said, is 3.2 million, and we have the engineering funded, and that is through a loan, and construction, and that funding is 1% over 30 years, and the principal forgiveness on that project was $515,000. So those are the ones that we've farthest along. Another thing is that the water tank is was designed. It's the one that's up behind Public Works Yard. That was designed before we had any requirements to meet seismic or stability for that. And so that tank is going to be, replacement would be 5.3 million. And the design engineering et cetera is funded. The paperwork is in with Business Oregon, who we are trying to get the loan from. We anticipate it'll be 1% over 30 years. And then we have a distribution backbone along Highway 101. Right now, if water is going to go to the north end, there are a bunch of lines that go throughout the city. One of them goes under the bridge and goes to the north end. And that means if there's a line break within the city itself, we can be losing water, so we lose pressure to get it to another point. And so what we are doing is advocating for a backbone along Highway 101. It would supply the city from various points. We could shut off valves, we could turn valves on, so that we could isolate certain problem areas. And also having more, again, using HDPE pipe. It's instead of relying on all the lines that have been in the ground forever, we would have a pipe just for that purpose of carrying water to these zones and then be able to use the isolation valves. So I hope I was clear on that, but that's a very big project that the city is undertaking. Utilities. Again, I think that the staff has done an amazing job trying to get the best deals that we could. I would love some of those deals. And so if anybody has any questions on that.
Did I hear you say we're paying $300,000 for a $600,000 loan?
Yeah.
$600,000 loan, you're paying $300,000, that's like a 50%.
It's 50% principal forgiveness.
No, you're saying, what I heard you say, and
Okay.
I'm sure probably heard you wrong. You said we're paying $300,000 for a $600,000 loan. In other
Yes.
words, we're getting a loan of $600,000 and we're paying $300,000 for that loan.
At 1%. It's a $586,000 loan. And I can't do the math in my head, but 1/2 of that is forgiven.
Right, but
So that gets it down to
it just sounded
$300,000.
like to me, you're saying we're paying 50% for a loan instead of 1%.
No, well,
Is
sorry.
it-
No, we're doing both. We're paying $300,000 loan value at 600,000 because we got 50% forgiveness. So they took off that part, but we're still getting the 600,000. And then the 300,000 approximately that we're paying, we'll be paying at 1% over 30 years. It's an amazing loan.
Okay.
Okay,
I'm
but if we
not
are-
hearing it right.
Okay, but we are paying $300,000 back.
Principal.
Yeah.
Okay, okay. I understand what you're saying. It's just that it sounded to me like you're paying you're getting $600,000, but in order to get that $600,000,
What does,
you're paying $300,000.
well, we.
Not on top of this.
Huh?
Not on top of what we're paying back. We're paying back less than we're getting.
I realize, I know
I'm
what you're
sorry.
saying. It's
Yeah.
just, I
Okay.
didn't think it was said
Um,
right. But
I'm sorry if I wasn't clear. I'm going from my notes, which are not clear. So anyway, that's the kind of work that we're doing on from utility rates. And the rates will have to be steeped up as we go along in order to collect the work that we've done in the previous year. That'll be charged down the rates. Eventually, yes.
A couple of clarifications. So, Bruce, you mentioned a backbone on 101. Would that obviate the need for the pipe going across the First Street Bridge?
Yes,
It's going to come down from 101
yes.
to the north. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. And then it would enter from the east to the west, but after it's gone across the river,
Got it.
the creek.
Sort of a random question, but if I were thinking about the big one tomorrow and what I would do to get water, go to Ecola Creek, I certainly wouldn't go thirsty. What work is the town doing to monitor quality of Ecola Creek? And it seems like the very best contingency plan is to make sure that that's potable water, if possible.
It's not totally potable, but it is a high quality water. We don't have to do much treatment on it.
Mhm.
And so we're lucky from that standpoint. We're also looking at some portable desal kind of setups. And I don't even know if it's truly desal, but it's something that can purify water. It's similar to the equipment they used, I think, in Eugene or Salem when they had the lake water went bad.
It's RO probably.
Pardon?
RO, reverse osmosis.
I don't think that it is. Because it's a portable unit and the amount of energy that RO needs, I don't think you could, get. So it just treats the things that are there that have to be treated to get it to a potable level.
Do we know what the point sources of contamination, if any, are for Ecola Creek? I mean, seems like if we can control point source contamination.
There is, to my knowledge, there's almost none because it starts in the ECFR and it comes down. Once it comes out of the springs, it's contained the whole rest of the time. So I don't know what the.
There's two separate sources of water. I believe Tim's speaking of Ecola Creek. And then you're speaking.
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. I'm talking about what comes down from the springs. Yes. I know that we do testing. Karen, we do testing for that, correct? For Trevor?
We do testing out of Ecola Creek, but that's not part of what this annual state testing requires, but we have done testing in Ecola Creek periodically. And when the EQ comes out and does their random testing, they test it in Ecola Creek.
And I don't know what I was trying to do is think of any facility or whatever that might be a point source, and I'm not aware of any along Ecola Creek.
I wasn't either, so.
Yeah. And we do draw from Ecola Creek on occasion. There's times in the summer that we have a draw and it's under the sediment. We take water out of the creek and then we put it into the treatment plant that's there. And then we go through a treatment of it and then we put it back in to the creek. And then it follows and goes out. But we have the ability to take water from the creek and treat it in that location. I hope I'm being clear. Okay, any other questions on the water? All right, then we get into facility construction. When I got here, I had experience with hurricanes, and if I try to translate that into seismic events, and this facility, if there was a seismic event, it's probably one of the first buildings that would go down. It's hollow block, and see the roof on the other side of this is holding up this wall. So the idea is that we as staff have to be at our best when something like that happens because everyone else will be at their worst. And so we have to have facilities in which to work. We've got to have the ability to, track where people are either hurt, where water lines are broken, roads are unpassable, all that in order to try to schedule and get things going, especially in the early hours. I think one of my biggest concerns to be pushing on this is that I don't think they're going to get to us very fast. I mean, the cavalry is that everybody that didn't get hit goes to that location. It's going to be very hard to get to us because there's so many bridges on 26 going across the Green Bridge, the Youngs Bay Bridge going this way. We've got tunnels and bridges. So there's going to be damage in other locations. And so I don't know how high will be prioritized. And so that just tells me we've got to be more ready than most. And that's why we're doing even the water supply. So that's why I'm so adamant on the police station or the City Hall and Police Station. We just got the numbers last night for the City Hall Police Station. That'll be 22 to 25 million. There are two particular locations that we're looking at because the new requirements are that we have to build to a risk category 4 for both tsunami and for seismic. And what that means is that there's only one location that we can do that for the police station. And that facility in particular is the one that has to be for the category 4 for the tsunami. And that is where the cache site is on the south end around Tolovana, where the entrance and exit into the city. And so we are looking at putting just the police station there, and then City Hall here, or City Hall and the police station there. That's the difference in the price. The 22 million is if we build everything up there. The 25 million is if we build, if we split them. It seems like it would be an easy question to put in front of the council, but there's an awful lot of people feel strongly that your City Hall should be in the city and accessible to people, that sort of thing. So there are going to be a lot of questions going on as we go through that process. And we will be having a funding discussion on March 28th, and that's when our financial advisors will be here. We'll be talking about bonds from the city in order to be able to go ahead and fund these things. And then finally, a fun one, Cannon Beach Elementary School rejuvenation. It's going to be a great project, or it's designed already as a great project. It'll depend on how much the city determines we can afford. It came in at 11.9 million. It will be a major draw. It'll be in terms of bringing people here from archaeology, the history, the general history, ecology, all sorts of things as far as the tourism. And so that there will be a significant benefit with that. Also, when I'm saying the history, it's also that was a location of a tribal village for thousands of years. And so there are artifacts there. The tribe is working very closely with us, trying to get this project designed. So it'll be a big draw. And also it'll be, to me, I call it a game changer for the community, because this community doesn't have a place that you can have 25 people sit and play bridge or something. There's no place for people to meet without going to one of the hotels and paying the standard rates. So this, there will be 3 classrooms, about 1,000 square feet each. And in my cartoony little world, people will be able to use those at no cost. There are locals coming in, and so I think there'll be some good benefits coming from that. That also will be discussing the financing on March 28th. So stay tuned for that one. But those are the we have the biggest projects that we have. We have other projects. We've been very active in public works, trying to retrofit the facilities that we have, and then also trying to procure generators, because we've had problems in the past where sewage was lost, and I guess I would say leak, because we had generator failures and equipment failures. And so we're trying to make sure it doesn't happen again. And so they're just a little bit smaller, but a generator, a smaller generator is $100,000 to be able to go ahead and take care of one of these buildings. So that's what we're going on project wise. Any questions?
I have a general question for Lori,
Go ahead.
kind of going back to that. And I apologize, Lori, if it's here and I didn't catch it. I'm used to looking at a variance analysis and you know, what I would like to, and it's probably here. But I'd love to see it like a variance analysis. Why? And I'm sure you have it off the top of your head, but 1.2 or 1.3 million above. Was that for the first half or this second quarter alone?
What are you looking at?
So I'm saying, I think revenues came in above plan by like 1.3, was it, or 1.2?
Oh, the fund balance? Oh,
Was it revenue, or I think it was revenue rather than fund balance. Fund balance would include capital items, right?
year to date, are you talking specifically the general fund?
I guess I am talking about current fiscal year to date, it was 3.8.
Are you on page 2?
Page 2.
Okay, good.
And that was 58% of budget. That wasn't the 1.2 or 1.3 million dollar.
I referred to $1,032,852 as the increase in fund balance to date.
Okay,
Is that what you're referring to?
maybe that was it. I should have taken a better note at the time. So do we know the sources of that variance? You probably do.
Combination of increasing revenues and expenditures being under budget.
Okay.
I can't, I don't know line by line and specifically,
Grants.
I don't know if we've ever done like a variance bridge. So you say, start here, it went up by.
no, I've never done that.
But it's
Never done that.
usually that's a really helpful way to.
In some cases, and it served us very well. We have a different motivation private sector does. And so we will budget on the high side to make sure that we've got the funding that we need. And we don't say, all right, well, we got all this extra money, so we'll go ahead and spend it. Because we have controls for that. But it got us when we went into the COVID situation. We were fine. We were able to go ahead and have an adjustment to go down. We knew that we had the funds to be able to stay there. And it's generally we have, if there's a surprise, it's a good surprise when we're doing our budget. And we could potentially get it tighter, but we don't have sales or something that we can increase or things that we can necessarily cut that are costs, because all of the things that we do every day. So, and anyway, so that might be part of the answer on it. So.
I'm assuming a big part of that is increase in lodging tax collections.
Yeah, that's helping.
Is that, where is that most clearly demonstrated on here?
On page 7, I'm comparing quarterly on line 2 and 3. You can see the actual that came in 2022 was 2.4 million. So now we're getting in 2023, 2.5 million. So that's increasing, helping the bottom line and the fund balance. So. And it didn't happen in the second quarter, so you've got that to offset. But we are on track to meet the budget. So comparing actuals to actuals is different, you know, you're going to get a different result when you compare it to the budget. So budget is what our target is, and we are currently meeting that.
Thank you.
So Lori, back to my question about the food tax, and the lodging tax you have through December in the second quarter, is it just because it's harder to calculate? They're working on the same schedule, right?
Okay, so I have second quarter results in here for room tax. Because when I'm preparing this report, I know the results. So I didn't used to include it, but everyone is so wanting to know about room tax. So I thought, okay, well, I'm just going to make it clear that it goes through January, my report. All the other numbers in my report are cut off at December 31 activity. With the exception of room tax, which I say it's through, at the top of my report, it's data through January 31. It's the best data I have. That doesn't mean I've reconciled the month of January already, like I do before I give results to people. But I make an exception here because everyone's very curious about room tax, as you all should be. Tax, I probably had some of those results when I was doing this. I'm sure I did because it operates just like room tax. But I didn't offer that information up. Does that make sense?
It does. I mean, it's only the second time you've ever had to do it, so, you know, that's.
Well, yeah, I know. We're still trying to get our feet, you know, our hands around the revenue stream.
But from a accrual accounting perspective, you would normally throw an estimate in there.
No. We do everything by cash basis through until we get to June 30, and then we accrue everything up into June.
So our interims are only cash basis.
Pretty much, with some exceptions. Some things we do, like land leases, we know what that is, so we accrue those things. It just depends on the type of revenue it is.
Got it.
Utilities, we accrue all of that. So you're always going to see actual results through. So if you look at the water fund, those are revenues through December 31.
So next year at this time, you might have the room tax in the report, just like you have the transient room tax.
You mean,
Because you'll have.
Food tax.
I mean, prepared room tax.
Okay, what was your question again?
I don't know.
I'm sorry.
Next year at this time, you'll have some history for the prepared food tax.
Yes, definitely. Yes, definitely. Well,
Well, then-
then historical.
We
Yeah.
treat that like you do the transient.
Oh, like you want to see the January
Are you
through January? I mean, if that's something you want to see, I can certainly do that. Or give that information in my narrative section here
Okay.
on page 1. Because it's not as detailed and it's not as, you know, as the room tax is. Tax has a lot more moving parts to it. EFT is pretty straightforward.
Okay.
So I could include that. And just make a note that it's January.
Thank you. You mentioned auditing the prepared food tax. What's your plan on when that will start?
I can't say I have a plan, but we definitely wanted to see what the collections were over the first year. And then I don't know what process Lori would normally go through in trying to compare. You know, like businesses. If there's one that's very high and one's very low, you know, possibly do an audit and something like that. And we have audit capabilities. We actually do regular audits for short-term rentals. And that's something that we probably need to implement in the PFT, that there's just a certain number get audited or something. But again, we're relatively new in it, and so we don't have that planned yet.
Sure, some of the other towns, they have something on that.
Yeah, we'll check, because there's 2.
Thank you.
Greg, did you have a question?
No, I'm just saying only 2.
Yeah, there's 2 others, yeah. Okay, well, the purpose of this was just to kind of give you this is where we are now. Let you know what you're likely to see in terms of rates, that sort of thing. There's some big question marks on the facility construction. But overall, you can see that we're in relatively good shape. And we work hard to keep us that way. But there are some things that have been surprises. One has been the cost of attorneys defending our land use decisions. That is way, if you want an outlier in our budget, that's an outlier. I think we've had to do 2 transfers in a year. So we'll probably see that number will be more up a little bit. So if there are no other questions, we can all, go to breakfast now or something.
Sorry, but I have another question.
Okay, go ahead.
This may be a question for Greg. I know that Tourism and Arts Commission is discussing the possibility of kind of expanding the kind of projects that you fund. Can you give us an update on where that conversation is and what the commission is thinking?
Sure. So we met 2 weeks ago, I think it was. And one of the topics was traditionally, since the 7% was put in 2010, it's been fund festivals or events and things like that. And over time, it's morphed a little bit to funding some things that are kind of what I call more brick and mortar, go through theater, Canopy Arts Association things that are just here and not events that come and go and trying to draw people into town. So there was some discussion on the folks has kind of changed to using the funds for tourism related projects and events, facilities, what have you, that meet the criteria of the restrictions on the state level. But also, to focus on those kind of things. And the example that we have was in 2 or 3 years ago when 20 some odd thousand was given to the Fluke Creek Trails. And that was kind of the catalyst that started that. So I can't speak for the committee because we haven't voted on anything, we haven't talked about anything, but the idea was that if an entity wanted to come, and it could be citizens, it could be the city itself, it could be a nonprofit, wanted to come and say, hey, I have this idea for Cannon Beach that will help Cannon Beach put out a better product, which is tourism related and it meets all the criteria for OSR 320. That could be the one I like to always use is the public restroom ones or idea that gets floated around because it's very obvious that the 1.2 million flushes that happen in there are not residents. And you can justify that that's a tourism related facility. It is not as glamorous as others, but and there's precedent that Tillamook County is doing the same thing and so forth. So the idea was that. And so if an entity came to the TAC committee and said, hey, I've got this great idea for a project that will meet tourism needs, meet all the guidelines, and will make Cannon Beach, the product of Cannon Beach, better for not only visitors, but community members alike, then, can we submit it? Not just some weekend festival type of thing, which there's merit in those too. But that was the discussion. And so we're hoping that this year, I can't remember the dates without looking at my notes, but I think it's the first part of, in a couple of weeks, the invitations for the 23-24 year go out. And if someone was to come and put something in, then we would be hope to review that as a committee. That answer?
Mostly. Last year there was a fund balance. You didn't award all the funds.
Correct. We have I think it's in here, but a fairly sizable reserve because not all of the funds were contributed. And part of that, if I remember correctly, without looking at the minutes or the video, COVID, we had a reserve that had been built up over multiple years. I want to say it was like 600,000 or something in that range that we dispersed in the COVID grants that came out of TAC, which comes out of PLT funds, was given to 30 some odd or 40 some odd businesses during 2020. the idea was, you can see here that TLT is increasing, town's busy. Let's not just have another festival for the sake of having a festival and build that reserve back up. So we were a little more reserved on building a reserve by not just grant. There were three or four applicants that came in with an idea, and we just said, not this year, sorry. We're trying to use that money to build back up the reserve. That's how I remember it.
There's another point too, is that we've had conversations with TAC. The city, in order to move forward with the Cannon Beach Elementary School rejuvenation, we need funds to pay the debt service on the note. And so the discussion that we've had is that there'd be a certain amount of the money that would normally go to TAC, that some of that would be pulled out before the allocation is given to TAC, because ironically, the city can't apply for that money. Because we're not a nonprofit, so we're a 501c3. So anyway, so there's the possibility that that will be helping to pay the debt service on it. It would reduce the funds, but it clearly meets all the criteria, and it creates a better venue for some of the events that other people are holding. Those kind of things, that there's real benefits to it. And when we talk about the funding something like restrooms, I don't think that. I think that the city has become bold enough that we would go ahead and do that. The problem is we don't have enough TLT money. It's all allocated someplace. It's either going to the chamber, TAC, some other location. And so that's the issue, that we're not concerned about whether or not we'll get our hands slapped. It's just that we don't have money to put there. So we would be willing to use TAC funds for other uses if they were available.
And I think that was the idea behind the committee's discussion. So, and a lot of it was, if you look at what Tillamook County's doing with their they do it at a county level, not a city level, but their dashboard of what projects they're doing and so forth. They plan per year to like, hey, we have this restaurant that we're putting in at the boat dock or whatever it is, and have allocated funds for that multiple years ahead of time, or divided up for 3-year whatever period. And so that was kind of the discussion, was whether it be a restroom or building a new look at it at the pond, any kind of city infrastructure that's used both by residents and citizens and visitors. Those are kinds of things that proportion of the TLT could go for legally, and we just never had a process for doing that.
So you'd have to change the rules on that it's a nonprofit, requiring nonprofit.
We had a little discussion on that. Like Bruce said, I don't know all the mechanics of how it works, but the city could pull some off the top if it was. I don't know if it has to be granted by, ultimately the TAC committee doesn't make that call. The council does. So maybe if that's over, then great, you can pull it off the top. Or if it is changing the rules to not make it a nonprofit, because my understanding was the whole nonprofit aspect was to work aside some of the going out to RFP things that the city must do. So if whatever, we didn't get anywhere, we just talked about it, about what would have to happen to make that happen. So if the city wanted to become someone, or if it was a group in town that just said, hey, we want to do this, can we do that? We're not a 501c13, how do we do that? So we just had some dialogue, but nothing has changed. But what we did in ending that meeting, we discussed that the process as it is now in the ordinance allows us to go outside just events. And so that kind of just broadened the scope of how we're thinking.
So you haven't changed anything. I think you don't necessarily have a plan to assess that and potentially change it right now.
Yeah.
This year, you're going to wait and see what comes in.
Yeah, it was discussion on if we want to do this, how would we do it? What under the current guidelines, ordinance, and all that stuff, what are we allowed to do? What are we not allowed to do? And that was really the extent of the discussion, and getting the pulse of the committee members. There's some that are, lukewarm on it. There's some that are in favor of it. And so just to get an idea, and ultimately it goes to city council. So there was somewhat of a push around. Rather than, whatever it is, $400,000 a year on average, it goes to that fund, which is coming out of the 2010 TLT increase, 70% of that for the 7%. Rather than just throw it to some events that come and go or never have an ROI or will never get off on their own in terms of financial, stability. Are there better ways to use those taxpayer funds?
Yeah,
That's the whole genesis of the discussion.
I'm glad you're having that conversation.
And Bruce, if it were to come off the top, what would that process look like?
There would just be an allocation of whatever the amount is for debt service for the school project, and the like amount would be taken off of what goes to TAC. So if it would normally be $500,000 and say it's 100,000, they would get 400, and 100 would go over here. So the TAC available for let me see, from the county funds, we would add $100,000 to that. So that's all that it would be. And again, it's because it's a debt service thing. It's something that is going to be for 30 years. And so it's not something we can ask for a grant every year. And also we are not, right now it's written as a 501c3. It makes you eligible, and we're not that.
Right. So you would come to the council and ask.
Oh, no. This is going to be the council's budget. We will make a recommendation. We'll lay it out for you, but it'll be your choice on how you ultimately make the decision.
Okay.
Yeah. No, it all gets back to you.
Okay, any other questions, comments? Gary, you finished?
I think I'm finished.
Okay, so we will look forward to May meetings with all this group, and meetings adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
They have an interest in the March 28th meeting.
Oh, exactly.